seems that our very special guest, Vic Mignogna, is going to be joining us right now, so let's patch him through. Hopefully the switchboard will not act up right now. And hi, you're on AE Radio.
Am I speaking to Kevin?
Yes, you are.
Well, hey,
hello,
Kevin.
Everyone. It's Vic Mignogna.
Yeah, how are you, Kevin? Thanks for having me, man.
I'm doing great. Thank you for showing up on the program. We're looking forward to this interview, and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to, stop by and answer some of our questions.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Okay, so let's get this interview on the way. And just so you know, Vic, this is my co-host, Omega Z, a.k.a. Ken. He's going to also be asking some questions as well.
Nice
awesome. Hey, Ken, how are you, man?
I'm
nice
doing
to meet
good,
you.
man. How's it going?
Going good. Thanks, dude.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's get this interview underway. We may take a call or two if we have time permitting. I'm not 100% sure if we'll have time or not, folks. So, you may want to direct message us in the chat if you have a question for Vic. Okay, question number one. How did you get into dubbing anime titles, Vic? Did you have formal training as an actor prior to getting your first dubbing role?
Well, actually, I did, and probably you'll find that most voice actors that you know that do a lot of work have a great deal of experience and background in acting, whether it be stage acting or on-camera acting. I've been doing stage acting and was in plays ever since I was very, very young. In fact, my minor in college was in theater. But it wasn't until about 12 or 13 years ago that a friend of mine I was working with on a video production suggested that I go and audition for this company in Houston called ADV Films. That he said that they dubbed Japanese animation into English and they needed actors. And so I went and auditioned quite unprepared for what was about to happen, and I got cast in a show, and then the next show, and the next show, and the next show, and was very grateful to have kind of started my career in voice acting that way. It's quite by accident.
Kind of fell backwards into it, huh?
Yeah. So that's a great one. And your first role in particular was, if the sources are correct that I was reading this up, it was Street Fighter V, and you played Vega?
Yeah, Street Fighter 2. I played Vega.
Okay. How was that experience in particular, since it was your first dubbing role?
Well, it was really strange, you guys. I mean, it's funny. You never sound the way you think you sound. And having never done anything like that, it was quite a sobering experience. I didn't think I was very good at it at first, and the more I did it, the more I tried to really, perfect the skills. And but I really enjoyed it. That was the bottom line. I had always loved cartoons and animated shows when I was young, and never imagined that I would actually be voicing characters for shows. But once I did it that first time, I kind of caught the bug, if you know what I mean. And
yes.
Yeah, I wanted to do it more and more and more.
Okay, definitely. Okay, Ken, you're up next.
All right, Vic, it sounds like you enjoy it quite a lot, but were there ever any kind of difficulties you had while dubbing over an anime title? And could you explain, what some of those difficulties are?
Well, you'll have to forgive me because I'm fighting a little bit of a chest cold here. I apologize.
Same here, Vic.
There are always difficulties in stuff like this. There are difficulties sometimes when the scripted lines don't match the mouth movements of the character, or when you're struggling to make something work in a particular scene. And voice acting is unique in that it incorporates a lot of different skills, timing and rhythm, and being able to kind of watch something and almost take a photograph of the way a character's mouth moves and where the pauses are, where the elongated words are, and then try to take the line and not just fit it into the flaps, but also make it sound natural and believable. So that's one of the big challenges for voice acting.
Okay, thanks, Vic. Next question will be, how many hours a week on average would you say you're in a studio recording, whether it be for voice acting or for even your music career that you have?
Well, there really is no set time, to be honest with you. Depending on what I'm working on, like, for instance, next week, I'll be up at Funimation doing some more Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And because that's Ed, and because it's like, the next 3 or 4 episodes, I'm going to be up there for 4 days in a row, like 8 hours a day. But that's very atypical. Most of the time, you're doing a character, and you may go in for a couple of hours, and then it'll be a few weeks until they need you again for the next set of episodes. So there really is no set amount of time that you're in the studio. It really depends on the character and the show that you're doing and the character that you're playing and how many lines the character has. I mean, there are several variables that come into play and how long and how often you're in the studio.
Interesting. Okay, Ken.
Yeah. Speaking of Full Metal Alchemist, you mentioned that you've done role after role after role. Can you tell us a little bit about how you landed the role of Edward Elric in Full Metal Alchemist and what it's like to work on such a popular title?
I sure can, and that's a great question. And it's funny because the truthful answer is I didn't even know what Full Metal Alchemist was about. I was completely unfamiliar with the series, and Funimation, I had already done 8 or 10 shows at Funimation. I'd done Dragon Ball Z, and Yu Yu Hakusho, and Kitty Grade, and Case Closed, and Spiral, and several others, and then Funimation got the license for Full Metal, and Justin Cook called me and said, I'd like you to come up and read for this show. So I went up to Dallas, and I was looking through the different character descriptions, and this one little kid really jumped out at me, this Edward Elric character. But you have to remember, I didn't know anything about the show. So for all I knew, he was some incidental character. I didn't know who he was or what role he played in the show, but I really liked the role. And so I read for it, and Funimation sent all the auditions off to the Japanese, because in big shows like this, the Japanese a lot of times want to have the final say on who gets cast to play a character. So actually a couple of months went by, and I didn't hear anything. And then finally I got a call from Funimation, and they said, okay, we're going to need to book you to come up here and start recording this show. And in that interim time, I had got online and looked around a little bit at Full Metal Alchemist and suddenly realized what a popular show it was, and I was filled with a kind of a bit of a sense of fear because the fans were so protective of this show, and they're like, you better do a good job, you better not screw it up. So
by the way, no pressure involved whatsoever.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So we went into it, and that's how I got cast to play that role.
Okay.
Awesome. I found it interesting that it's actually the Japanese that have the final say. For a while there, I had the misconception that American studios just picked and choose and said, okay, we're going with this. So it's interesting to know that the Japanese actually have a say in that.
Well, it depends on the show.
Okay.
Big shows like Full Metal Alchemist or Naruto, Bleach, those kind of big shows. The Japanese creators want to have some input into what actors are chosen. And by the way, they want to have input in the main characters. They're not as concerned with approving every role. So like once we started the show and we had the core cast down, as different actors were needed, as different characters came up, the American directors were able to make those decisions and go with them. It was only the lead roles that the Japanese wanted to have a say in.
Okay.
Cool. That's definitely an interesting insight into the business itself. Okay, next question. Currently, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is airing on Adult Swim. Can you tell us a little bit about that series and how it differs from the original?
Well, yeah, I can tell you that, first of all, we're all very, very excited to be doing Full Metal again. When we ended the first series, there was absolutely no indication on the horizon that there would ever be any more Full Metal. So about a year and a half or so ago, when we heard that they were making a new series, we were very excited, but then we were kind of like, uh-oh, what if they screw it up? You know, what if they do some zany, wacky, weird, you know, cheesy version of it just to try to capitalize on its popularity? But what we quickly found out was that the new series follows the manga story much more closely than the original series did. The original series followed the manga up through about episode, 13, 14, 15, and then it started branching off into a different storyline, in a different direction. And even though it was a great series, it was not the manga story. And even though the anime fans really loved it, they also would always tell me, oh my gosh, have you read the manga? I'm like, no. And they said, oh, it's fantastic. So when I heard that they were making a new series that was going to follow the manga very closely, I was real excited about it. And that's what it's doing. The first handful of episodes are kind of recapped. They're kind of similar. They're the similar beginning as the original series. But then when you get into the teens, 15, 16, up in there, suddenly this new series is going to start following the manga trail, and it will, it'll go off in a different direction.
Okay, definitely. That was great. It seems a little weird, though, in a way, because, I mean, you had done also the Full Metal Alchemist movie, which sort of gave some finality to it. But it's interesting that there's also the manga out, it branches off. So it's going to be interesting to see how far that goes, because if I'm not mistaken, the manga is actually still ongoing in Japan as well.
You're right. The manga has continued to be written even after the original series and the movie were done. But it may interest you and your listeners to know that the mangaka is working with the animators, and they have settled on an ending.
Oh,
I believe there is going to be an ending to the manga, and it will be portrayed in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Okay. Thank you for that insight, Vic. Kind of like an exclusive right here on TE Radio.
I know, I guess. I don't know much more than that. I'm just a lowly actor, but that's what I heard, so I hope that's true.
All right, Ken, you're up next.
So, being that you like Full Metal Alchemist and you're all with the fans and whatnot, is there any animes that you're a fan of personally, or are you an anime fan in general?
Well, that's a good question, too, because the honest answer is I was an anime fan when I was a little kid, but I just didn't know it. When I was 10 and 12 and 13 years old, I watched Speed Racer religiously. And Kimba the White Lion, and so many Battle of Planets, and so many shows that I loved when I was a little kid, but I didn't realize that they were anime. I knew that they looked different. I knew that they were drawn differently, and the voices seemed different than the cartoons I was used to, like Scooby-Doo or Bugs Bunny. But and I loved them, but I didn't know why they were different. I just knew they were different. And so, imagine how neat it is for me to have been a fan of that stuff when I was little, and now to be doing what I'm doing as an adult. In answer to your other question, I don't have any particular shows that I'm a fan of just because I don't have time to. I have no time. I have no time to watch shows that I'm not working on, or play video